Fun. And we'll be here Wednesday night, tomorrow night, with a reception in Cedar Creek Room. So I hope you'll stop.
Yep. Okay, we are live on the YouTube.
Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. This is the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. It is Tuesday, March 11th, my daughter's 33rd birthday.
Oh.
And we're going to go around the room and introduce ourselves and the folks in the room with us, and then your presentation. So I'm Scott Campbell. I'm representative from St. Johnsbury, Caledonia, and Essex District.
Richard Bailey, Memorial 2.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington. Michael Southwood, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Derek Worry, Washington 2.
Graham Klempner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Morris Miller, you.
Jack Locker, committee assistant.
Right? And then Lauren, go down the.
I'm Lauren Hibbert, Deputy Secretary of State.
Sean Sheehan, elections director.
David Hall, Director of Business Services.
Okay,
And
fantastic.
I'm Sarah Copeland-Hansis, Vermont Secretary of State.
Fantastic.
And I want to thank you all for inviting us in this afternoon. We have a PowerPoint presentation that is on the committee page that will help guide us through this discussion. Before I dive into the meat of this, I want to remind you all of an invitation you should have seen, hopefully in many different formats, in paper as well as via email, to our Civic Health Index reception tomorrow afternoon at 4:30 in the Cedar Creek Room. It's an opportunity for us to introduce our work in the Civic Health Index and to celebrate its publication and introduce you to some of our partners who helped us to create this. So I hope you'll stop by. There will be refreshments and a cash bar.
Okay.
So
And before you start, I'll just say I'm expecting a phone call having medical issues that I may have to step out for. So if that happens, I'll just rush down.
Representative Amelia will run the show.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Super. So we really welcome the opportunity to come in and talk with you a little bit about the tremendous undertaking that our office has been working on over the last 2 years around our IT projects. And I want to frame this up first and foremost as a different way of looking at IT. We always thought of our welcoming mat or our front door as being, the physical building that we occupy, and that building space was really, the most critical need in order to meet the needs of the public and to follow what we are required to do statutorily. Increasingly, though, the physical building that we're in is really quite secondary, because what is more important now is that we have a good IT front door for people to come in and to conduct their business. And these investments that we've made in creating a new IT system in one realm and then updating IT systems in other realms really are critical for us to be able to serve the public, to do that quickly and efficiently. But also, it's a critical way for us to be able to do more efficiently with the personnel that we have. And you'll hear a little bit more about that when we dive into business services and elections in terms of what our IT does to enable us to do everything that we do without needing to add a number of new staff members. So imagine the surprise that when I was elected and sworn into office in 2023 and realized that the first thing that our office needed to do was to replace 4 distinct IT systems all at the same time. Sort of a, panic-stricken look. I'm sure you can imagine. It was a little bit dreadful, because it hadn't occurred to me that all of these things would have to happen immediately when they needed to happen. But that's the way the previous contracts worked. So in the spring of 2023, we put out 4 RFPs for these different projects, and over the summer and fall, we looked at demos, met with different vendors, worked very closely with ADS to to execute 4 contracts for these different systems. And over the course of the winter and spring of 2024, we also issued an RFP for our Safe at Home program, which I'll tell you a little bit more about. So we had 4 expiring IT systems and a 5th system that was brand new, bringing us out of the paper realm and into the digital realm.
Can I ask you, so when you say expiring IT systems, these were contracts for, with vendors
Mhm.
that were expiring and so you had to go out for, with a new RFP for new contracts that you, and I guess you're going to tell us whether you continue with the same vendors or
Yes.
with something completely different.
Mhm.
And is that, okay.
Yes. And, you know, the important thing that we focused on as we were looking at both writing the specs for what we were looking for and choosing the next vendor was we don't want to box ourselves into just replicating what we have right now, because the technology has changed over the last dozen years, and there may be new functionalities that could help us work more efficiently and serve Vermonters more efficiently. And so we really tried to expand our thinking about what we were doing, not just replacing the thing that we had, but looking for new innovations.
Great. Excellent. Okay. Thanks.
So the first system that I wanted to talk about, and then I'll invite David to come and join me to talk about business services, is our Safe at Home program. So when I came into office, our Safe at Home program, this is our address confidentiality program that in its classic form was created to protect survivors of stalking, human trafficking, or domestic violence by allowing them to keep their physical address confidential and have their mail sent to a PO box that we receive, and then we forward it as the only people who know what their physical address is. So this Safe at Home program is part of a suite of things that someone might do if they were fleeing domestic violence or human trafficking. But it wasn't really terribly functional even for that legacy group of participants in the program, because in order to enroll in the program, you either had to have contact with a domestic violence agency and go through one of their applicant assistants, or you had to be able to go to our website, download a PDF, print it out, fill it out, and send it back to us. If you're fleeing domestic violence, if you are couch surfing because you're trying to figure out where you and maybe your children are going to live next, it is pretty inconvenient to have to find a printer, get the page printed out, fill it out, and send it back to us. And so we knew we wanted to do something to make that easier. And then the legislature in 2023 expanded eligibility for the Safe at Home program, which meant that we could be looking at, you know, a vast expansion of the number of participants that we fill. So we knew that in order to do that efficiently and be able to give that same level of service to Vermonters, a portal was going to be the way to go, both for the customer service side, but also for our staff to be able to maintain the workload without needing to hire new folks. So we put out an RFP for an online platform that was contracted to launch on March 1st of 2025. It actually launched on February 20th. The implementation costs were exactly as anticipated in the budget, and our maintenance costs will be really easy to maintain over the course of years. And so we are really pleased with the way that project has come together, and we know now that Vermonters will be able to access the portal easier, and our staff will be able to fulfill the mail forwarding needs of the participants.
Sorry, question?
Is it okay to do questions? Or
I want to wait till the end.
Okay.
On the maintenance costs, maintenance costs, is that for the purveyor, or is that ADS?
That is going to the contractor, to Reframe Solutions, who built the portal for us. And so that'll be what our annual cost is for that. And, you know, if you think about what it would cost to hire another human being to be able to take on the extra workload of more participants in the program. $35,000 a year is a bargain. You can't get a human being for that.
So I'm actually looking at your website and I'm looking at how to access the portal.
Are you? Did you find it?
No, I did not.
Oh, well, this is what it looks like.
Oh,
It's under more services. It's under,
under more services.
And Representative Bailey seems to have a question.
There it is.
Yeah, could you go back a screen? Please. Oh, no, that's good. I'm sorry. I could see it. Your contract date, when was what we've been looking for here is when it was actually, we're thinking of it, of the new system. Was that the contract date? Or was there a
That
couple of
date
years?
that you see, March 1st, is the targeted launch date. I don't remember do you remember offhand?
yes,
Is it a 2-year process?
No.
no, this one
Maybe.
was, sorry, Lauren Hibbert, for the record. This one was particularly streamlined, and we went out to an RFP in the spring of 2024, and we had a contract signed, I believe, early October of 2024. And we did a quick implementation October through February.
Thank you.
So status and next steps, you'll see this pattern repeated for some of the other systems as well, but we've been up and live with this system for a couple of weeks. We are really pleased with the functionality. We're going to be continuing to meet with the vendor to iron out any bugs that we might encounter through using the system. And so we feel like we are in a very good place to call that a successful launch of a new IT project.
Of the current participants, were they all ported over from the old system, or are some of those new signups with your new system?
So I think we've had 1 or 2 people sign up with our new system. Most of them were ported over. And you may get a kick out of this. The way the last system was maintained was through a variety of different Excel spreadsheets. All of that data needed to be brought into alignment and put into the back end of this portal so that we now have the ability to communicate directly with them. Deputy Hibbert?
I was just going to say that we do have data. We did an active, proactive outreach to all of our participants. And I think we have about 60% of them have logged into the new portal and see its functionality. They didn't have to, but we were trying to make sure that they understood it was there. There's a lot of functionality here. People can change their address. People can communicate with our office to put their mail on hold, all within the portal. So it was really important that the participants know of the new features. And so they can use the portal to communicate with our office as opposed to email or phone. Of course, we're available by email and phone, but we really want to encourage the use of the portal as well.
That's great. And I'm sorry, can I ask one follow-up question? How mobile friendly is this site functionality? Completely.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I am of the opinion that probably no data is safe at this point. Do you have procedure for data?
Yes. That's one of the things that we really appreciate about the vendor that we're working with on this system. You'll see their name come up in some of our other systems as well, including our election management system. They understand the importance of keeping that data safe and doing regular penetration testing and regular refreshes of the security environment so that we can be sure that data is safe.
But I wonder, is it safer than it is in an Excel spreadsheet?
Well, I mean, it's not hard once if you were to gain access to somebody's computer to open up an Excel spreadsheet. This has some added security layers.
But do you have, my question was, do you have a process for if there is a data breach?
Deputy Hibbert has been.
Yes, that is
more
addressed
trusting.
within the contract. But also within our agreement with ADS, we have security backup with ADS. We also have a WAF. All of our programs are in the cloud and then protected by the WAF that we maintain. And then we also have what's WAF? Why'd you have to ask me? I have no
The
idea.
firewall.
Yeah.
I don't know what the WA stands for.
But also our sites are being continuously monitored so we can see who's trying to contact us and how. For instance, on many of our sites, elections and business services and the Office of Professional Regulation, we get a lot of people trying to send us multiple requests from other countries. So then we can block a country for a period of time. And all of our systems are not accessible if you are not within the United States, meaning you can't log into them if you're not within the United States. But we do have continuous monitoring and reports that come daily of what types of attacks or attempts on our systems are being done.
Do you happen to know, so if there's a data breach, what the period of time is by which the folks are made aware of that data breach?
Our constituents, I don't have that off the top of my head, but we do have a process.
Is it possible that we could follow up on that? There's a reason that I'm asking this. So in a larger context, in terms of security breaches or IT within state government, it's something that I've been a little concerned about who gets notified and when. And this, obviously, I'm sure you agree, seems particularly.
If I could just follow up on that, you would find out immediately if there was a breach of some sort. Right. And one other question you may have said, and I missed it, how many folks are in this Save at Home program right now? How many names do you have?
We have about 200 participants. It is on that last slide. 201 total participants, 125 households. So if someone has dependent children, they can be added as participants within that household.
Great, thank you.
And if there aren't any other questions about Safe at Home, David Hall, our Director of Business Services, will run you through the rollout of our new business services platform.
Hi, David Hall, not legislative council. That's the second time I've done
You
this
are coming
today.
back to the office with us afterwards,
Well,
right?
And Director of Business Services at the Office of the Secretary of State, formerly legislative
Recovering
council.
eventually. Okay.
Yes.
And I think it sprung to mind because I don't know how many of you know, but before I worked there, I worked here. And consumer protection was one of my areas of subject matter dedication. And the Consumer Breach Notice Act actually applies to the state. So all those protocols and those timeframes that you're asking about are applicable in that law, would apply to a data breach to any of our systems as well. So once we became aware of the notice, we would have the same timeframe as a private entity to notify people of a breach and the subsequent follow-up notice to the AG's office.
Is it federal law or
No, it's state law, yeah. NGSA 2435?
No.
And thank you, David. That is our process.
Yeah.
That's what's within our statute, within our contracts is that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure your current legislative council could walk you through that convoluted process if you wanted to hear it again. But I'll switch gears and talk about the system for which my team is responsible. That's the business services online filing system. If you think about, why we're here, what we're talking about, we have this because our office, the Secretary of State's office, is the agency, the entity charged with accepting and maintaining the records for businesses throughout their life cycle, basically. So there are common law business structures that have to register with us on a 5-year basis, and then there are statutory business organizations that have to register with our office to become separate legal entities. That's when they are formed. They have periodic, usually annual reporting requirements to remain in good standing with the state. And then at the end of the life cycle, they actually have, the duty, the ability to file closure filings and terminate their status. And so, that's what we do. That's what my division does, is we maintain those records. And I think it's on the next slide, but so far it's about halfway through March and we've already processed over 44,000 filings. I have a 5-member team plus myself. We get that volume of records in, 2.5 months. We get about 50 phone calls an hour. We get dozens of emails a day. It is a tremendous workload to maintain all of these records on behalf of businesses. And I think it's fair to say is from a people perspective, we are certainly maxed out. This new system replaced a pre-existing system, which is one step removed from paper. And I remember my early days here before that system was implemented. The previous Secretary of State, or maybe a few ago, would come in with stacks of papers to demonstrate just how many filings were received. And so we still have paper forms. You can still file things via paper. You can still come to our office and fill it out by hand if you really want to. But obviously, with this volume of activity, with the number of businesses involved at this point, online is where it's at. That's what people want. That's where we're trying to meet them. So we have this online system that is completely mobile friendly. It was designed to be compatible, recognizing that 60-70% of our filers use a cell phone, some of them exclusively by cell phone. I always take my brother-in-law as the example. He does all of his business and banking just by phone, and it was really important to us to optimize for that. When we migrated from the old to the new system, we sort of did a double duty. We had to build a whole new system from scratch. So this was my team and our vendors team meeting 3 or 4 days a week for half a day, every day, going through the statutory requirement of every single filing that we manage and building a system that correlates to the legal requirements and the statutes. The old system, it had a lot of good parts. It was not always aligned with the law. And I would be like, why do we do it this way? Nobody really knew, or it was an Aliism, or we just sort of made things up one part because of system limitations in the old system, and one part because I don't know what convenience, expediency. But at the end of the day, we felt like we're going to build a system that reflects the law that we have. And then we're going to come back and change the law the way we think it would improve it further. I'm in that process now. I testified this morning on a bill that will make further revisions to the statutes and will probably change our processes a little bit to try to streamline operations.
So this brings to mind a question. I just read a book over the break, and I was sick most of the break, so I got a lot of time to rest. And, the book that Tori brought about digital systems, it's called Recoding America. Really, I quite enjoyed it. And one of the points that the author makes, the author is somebody working at U.S. Digital Services before it became DOJ, and has experience in tech and in government. And one of the points that she made over and over again was the importance of these systems. First of all these systems that we're talking about are the way government services are delivered to the public now. And so they're really important. And what's really important about them is that they are designed for users and not necessarily for the rules. The rules need to adapt, really. I mean, as you're I'm interested to hear about that too, if there's time. But I guess one of my questions is, to what extent in the course of developing this and Safe at Home and the election section and all your entire overhaul here has user testing or user interaction been the focus, as opposed to starting with the rules and having an online form that asks every question that addresses every rule, instead of that approach, taking the other approach, which is what does a user really need to tell you in order to be able to take advantage of the service? Do you see what I'm asking?
I do. It's a chicken and egg, or maybe an existential question of, do you build a system that you want or that the law prescribes, or do you have a hybrid system that does a little bit of both? I will say this, and I can only speak for my system, but where we could, we took a broad reading of the law based on what we felt like would be the most user-friendly way to approach it. And I'll give you a concrete example. There's a process called reservation of names where you can come to the Secretary of State's office, you can reserve the use of a business name for 120 days in advance of actually registering the business. So you're holding it while you're getting your stuff together, and then you will convert that reservation to an actual registration. Well, every statute for every different business entity has a reservation of name provision. They're all different. And then there's one in 11 VSA 1626, I think, that we could that we could read broadly to say you could really use this section to govern all of them. You don't have to have an LLC specific reservation or a corporation specific reservation. You could use this one section of law the way that it's written. It says person, so that could be across the board. So we took that and we said we're going to just have one mechanism rather than make people jump through hoops 9 different ways, depending on the entity type. And then we will apply that across the board. And then in this proposal, we will use that as our model and change the statute everywhere else to say, refer back to this provision. This is the way we're doing it. So that's one where we were allowed to do that, and we've definitely tried to be customer forward.
Yeah.
That is not always the case, unfortunately, but we tried to do that as much as we could.
Yeah.
And so the second part of the answer is, and then in those places where we identify choke points or inconsistencies or unnecessary burdens, we said we will go straight to the legislature and ask for statutory revisions. So hopefully by July, those will be harmonized.
Yeah, great. Okay. Another example, I guess, of what I'm talking about is there might be a set of 8 questions you could have that would cover 80% of the users. And the other 20% of the users, you need to have another 16 questions. But maybe those are done manually or some other way so that it doesn't burden everybody who's going through the system to answer all 24 questions. Instead, they can only, you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Something like that.
And we added in other flexibility in the way we built this so that we have the questions that you're supposed to answer because that's how it works. But then we also have the ability to upload your own documentation if you want to write it a different way, or you have addenda to submit to go along with your filing. I mean, we tried to have the flexibility of, here are options for identifying yourself. Are you a director? Are you a whatever manager? But then there's the other, just specify. There's the upload option so that you don't have to be boxed in necessarily. So we tried to be flexible in that regard as well to meet people where they are with their own unique circumstances.
Good, great. Thank you. I won't divert you any further.
Did you say 50 calls an hour?
Mm-hmm.
And did you say team of 6?
Well, including me.
Yeah.
And I'm returning calls too.
Including you, yeah. So
math doesn't matter.
Each one of you fields a call every 7.5 minutes on average. How in the world do you get anything done?
It's not easy in this time of year. It's not as bad all year long. This is the first quarter, which is when most LLCs and corporations file their annual reports on top of the new system. So it's a painful 3 months, but it won't always be like this. And I think, so when we migrated the data, we did not migrate user profiles for security reasons and redundancy reasons. So everybody had to create a new account, new registration profile, which is a huge part of the volume of inquiries and support. Once we get through this quarter and most of the users are now set up and familiar with the system, I hope I'm going to quit. No,
Can we take that out of the record?
It's a joke. I think we're going to be in really, really good shape, but we do have, the only way out is through. We're getting through.
Yeah. Thank you.
Brett, curious about the role of ADS in this project.
Sure. So let me talk about the project and I'll start there. So the contract, work started before I arrived in that summer, and the throughout the contracting process, ADS is engaged. They have we had regular weekly, sometimes bi-weekly tri-weekly meetings to talk about the needs from the system, to talk about how that gets reflected in the contract, talk about what the workload and distribution is going to look like. Once we executed and started the work, we had a business analyst and a project manager assigned to us from ADS, and they were there for every meeting when we had this work done with our vendors. So we'd have these build sessions, and they would be there looking at it from the business side, project management side. Kelly Nolan was our manager, fantastic. She was responsible for, everything from aggregating the documentation to filing, periodic reports, interfacing with the vendor if we need to escalate any issues for security purposes, because the security protocols in our contract are probably like the thickest part of the thing. And, we needed to interface regularly on those kinds of issues. So they were there all along, sort of as a partner. They had to sign off on the contract. They reviewed the contract along with the AG's office before we could go through the finalization. So they were a huge support to us. I'm worried about burning too much of the time for mine, so I'm going to try to be a little bit quicker. I'll just highlight the bottom box. So we went live 2 days after our target date because we chose to go live on Sunday rather than the Friday, and just make sure the thing didn't crash and it was lighter volume. That worked. We came in under budget, which I'm pretty proud of. And our maintenance cost is about $110,000 less for this system than it would be under the previous system. So we're doing more for less money. The only reason the actual is TBDs is because we haven't started paying that bill yet, but I have no reason to think the maintenance cost won't be as projected. And if you wouldn't mind flipping the slide, I'll finish up. So, just the status, it's almost exclusively online filings. We're definitely still ironing out bugs, but, our vendor is incredibly responsive. We have rollouts every few days of whatever fixes we need. We identify. We've built already some new enhancements like the bulk data download and advanced search features. One of the best parts of working with this vendor relative to the last is this system is completely customizable. So if we identify a need or a change, it happens within days at basically with no extra cost, which is amazing and a complete contrast to our previous system. And looking forward, like I said, there's a proposal, it's H243 that may be voted out of Commerce tomorrow. And then we have phase 2, which I like to think of as bells and whistles, all the fun stuff we really would like to have that we get to build out in the future. So that's it for me, unless you have more questions about business services.
What's the budget for phase 2? Or the potential allocation?
Right now, it's nothing. Our vendor is pretty great. When we recognized that we needed temporary efficiency to be part of the system, they just built it. And the phase 2 stuff is like, we want to create a new workflow for municipal and public corporations. So they have a dedicated workflow. For whatever reason, UVM or your water district needs to be registered in the system for their SAM registration with the federal government, for instance. We're just going to do it. We're just going to build it out so they have that dedicated flow for themselves, and we will do that in-house.
I'll just add that I registered a business with the new system and it was smooth as silk.
Yay! We're so glad to hear that. Really am. Thank you all.
All right. Now, Director Sheehan will go through the 3 systems in our elections realm.
We don't guessing this. Some of you nobody here may be familiar with some of these systems, particularly the first one. So again, Sean Sheehan, Elections Director. My division within the Secretary of State is responsible for elections as well as campaign finance and lobbying. And those are the 3 systems that were all overhauled simultaneously, as the Secretary referenced earlier, coming in for the ones that needed it. On the campaign finance side, I think as many of you know, maybe all of you use the system, not sure. All candidates, PACs and parties file campaign finance disclosures through our system. And then we in turn make those reports accessible to the public as part of our transparency role. Our division doesn't have investigative or enforcement authority over campaign finance law. That goes through the Attorney General's office. Candidates that meet certain thresholds have to file the campaign finance report through the Secretary of State's office. For the last 10 years, I think similarly here, we've been in the system, we've been able to do so online, again, not needing that big stack of paper as had been the case before. And so certainly I think with that system saved a lot of staff time, with a better user experience than having to deal with paper. And yet over a decade, aging systems become not as seamless or maybe not as user friendly as people are accustomed to as technology improves. And that was part of the impetus here to launch a new system. I only started last May, so even after David missed even more of the early procurement stage, but as was referenced at the beginning, it was on that same timeline through 2023, and with the RFPs and then the contracts being signed at the end of 2023. The campaign finance system had the target launch date of December 2024. We launched it on January 6th of 2025. Part of the rationale and the timing there was really trying to work around election cycles and campaign finance cycles. So with that final report for the last cycle being due on December 15th, giving that the time afterwards, there's always that couple weeks where reports can be filed, an effective grace period, but then not allowed to be filed for previous cycles. So given that, put it right in the middle of the holidays, do launch right before the holidays or right after, and doing it right after seemed to be the more humane thing to do for staff and vendors and everyone else. So that was the story behind the launch date. The implementation cost in the contract was just over $360,000. To date, we've paid out $281,000, but that's just because the final payments come after that implementation date warranty period. So it's going to be right on the mark of being on budget. The annual maintenance costs is only $20,000 per year. You'll see that's less than some of the others. We also went with Reframe Solutions, the same vendor. Who did the business services and Safe at Home for that matter, and we'll talk about the election management system. So the hosting costs are baked into those annual maintenance costs, but in the case of the election side, it's the same hosting costs as for the campaign finance election. That's why it's lower. But really those maintenance costs, I think when the questions came up for David, when you want to add other bells and whistles, part of that's contemplated by those the maintenance cost budget there. So the work on that side. On the next slide, we'll just say where we are. The system has been used for the last 2 months. Mark Hool on our team, our campaign finance point person, has been running office hours and training sessions every Friday at 12 noon. We found that consistency of people knowing they can log into Teams has been helpful given the cycle that we're at. Many of you may not have gone on yet. You don't have to July. But really, our initial stage has been those local officials, people who are running for city council seats and maybe and cities or other local officials that would be meeting that threshold. So that's kind of been able to serve as a
Soft launch.
Soft launch, right? I was going to say pilot. Really, soft launch is the better term. It's not a pilot. It's a soft launch, and we expect as the statewide candidates, legislators use it as your time in the election cycles come up. We'll be able to help, and maybe other things will arise. But the pieces that have arisen, much as David said, our vendor Reframe has been very prompt in squashing those bugs, making patches, getting the new system rollouts as they come. For our team, it was, I think we maybe have the advantage, at this time compared to David of we're not getting 50 phone calls an hour here. We were spread out. It certainly has been quite busy with town meeting day supporting towns and other pieces we have coming up. But really our crunch time, was last year, the even numbered year. So having the team find the resources to do the development, to do the specs, to collaborate with the vendor and do the testing. Partly was a crunch time. And as a result, we really focused on making sure the filing side of campaign finance was really honed and as smooth as possible. And the feedback we've gotten so far has been positive on that side. And then the other side, of course, is the archive and searching for the public accessibility and the transparency of reports that have been filed. And that's a piece we're continuing to look at, particularly some of the mass media filings and the searches for those pieces have come up. We've worked with our vendors to make those more accessible, and we're hopeful so far that it has been more. The other system was transparent, but sometimes it was hard to see multiple filings, different names. Take a lot of time to sift through it. And one example of that is the report that we started last year, the campaign finance transparency report of all the statewide and county and legislative candidates who had filed, who had not, who had filed what they, no activity reports and so forth. That report that we put, it looked pretty simple. It looked like just an easy table on it, but in the old system was a lot, many hours for each report, a lot of cross-referencing the two systems, not talking to each other, or being set up the same way. So we're very really looking forward to the next round where the two systems will talk to each other, and that's going to save us a lot of time, be much more automated, increasing transparency, making it easier for the public to see who's running for office, where their reports are, and reducing labor on our side.
One quick question. Were you able to scrub the lists of contributors and also vendors for duplicates? Because there were a lot of duplicates in the previous system.
Yeah. So on the contribution side, certainly I think of the people entering, that's going to be more automated. Everyone had to register in and will match. We did scrub it. I think to that side too, that the data didn't all come over. People registered, new in there. And then the systems before for the searches, I think we're still looking through some of that. The part of the complicating factor in some ways is, I think the donors.
Yeah.
Is that, people are, if you're a candidate or a PAC, you're referencing that you're entering the donor where they came in. To make that completely consistent and kind of rock solid, you would need to have them entered the one way and be found. So the system didn't do that. I'm sure there still will be other ways. It's not going to be the ideal search in that sense, but at least for the people registering, there's going to be a lot more consistency there, and you won't have kind of multiple names of candidates, PACs, and so forth.
Okay, good. Thanks. Any questions? Okay. Around.
Our second system is the lobbying information system, and that side of our duties at all registrations and periodic disclosures for lobbying activity in the state has come through our online filing system. We also have all the pictures and profiles for registered lobbyists are downloadable in the registered lobbyist photo book in our lobbying information system, and it's generated like a book, but it's actually dynamic, which some people ask when it's going to come out. And in the old days when it was paper, obviously you go to press with something and you either find an error after that and you catch it, 2 years later, or they aren't in it. This is dynamic. It's a reflection of the information that's in the system at any given time. So the registration period is 2 years, coinciding with the legislative biennium, and all lobbyists are required to register with the Office of the Secretary of State within 48 hours of commencing lobbying activity. So somebody who didn't lobby in January or February, but start this week, will have to register. They'll be in that photo book. So it's dynamic in that way. And again, all registrations come through the filing system, similar to the campaign finance system. We're on a similar timeline of when we contracted, and we're aiming to launch in December 2024 for the same rationale. We launched at the beginning of January. Didn't do it the same day. That would have been pushing our luck. We did one the January 2nd, which was, I believe, a Thursday, toward the end of the week, and then the 6th, the campaign finance one, was the following Monday. And both were smooth in that sense. Similarly on the implementation cost, we expect it to be right on target. The contracted amount was $630,000. We've paid out $484,000 to date. Same thing, going through that final deployment, the warranty period, and then it'll be right on target. The maintenance costs are $61,000 per year. This one's a little higher. It does include the hosting costs is really the difference on this side here. And again, has built in so we can change those bells and whistles and other improvements that come. And that amounts at $61,000 for the first year of the maintenance, and then it ratchets down between subsequent years of the contract, expecting that in the first year you're going to have a few more tweaks than you will subsequently. So similarly, the system has been used for 2 months. We've also done online trainings, but also Dan Brown, who's our point person on lobbying, has been over here in the State House cafeteria, knowing it's a good place to find lobbyists, as you probably all find too. And so brings his laptop over. They have their laptop and able to provide some of that in-person training, walking people right into to logging on. Has been helpful, and we've heard very positive feedback and appreciation for being accessible in that manner. I should mention we have a different vendor here with Stonewall Solutions out of Rhode Island is the vendor that did the lobbying system. We also used Agency of Digital Services with them together on helping through the procurement and the stage there. And Stonewall Solutions has also been very quick to address any minor bugs that have come up. They're very, very positive to work with. Today we've had 500 lobbyists register into the new system and 622 employers.
I want to commend you for going with Stonewall Systems for a lobbying firm. Just
You like the imagery there?
we're getting over that potential hurt. Yes.
So that brings us to our third and biggest of our systems, the election management system. That one was originally targeted to launch in December 2024. It's the only one of our systems that isn't launched yet. The reasons for that, I think, are probably twofold, or maybe threefold, depending on how we define them. First is doing all of the work concurrent with running all the elections we had last year was a very heavy load, but particularly dealing with the biggest and most used system for the elections. Second, launching 3 systems at the same time would really seem to be pushing our luck for even bugs that would be going. And then thirdly, much as was the case with I believe with David's as well, speaking about going to be up for that first quarter when the filing is heavy, and the case with campaign finance wanting to be up right at the start of that election cycle, lobbying wanted to be up right at the start of the biennium cycle for lobbyists. With election management, really it's about trying to launch at a time when town clerks and users are going to be least likely to be using it right in the midst of it. And as we just had last week, town meeting day, local elections, it's a very big time for elections throughout Vermont. So waiting till we are clear of town meeting day, didn't have elections after, just made the most sense on that front. It also should back up too, is maybe you know with the election management system, it's how we run the elections, but what does that mean? You've probably seen many of the interfaces we have, but our role is providing that statewide checklist, the bones, that infrastructure for the statewide checklist. Elections in Vermont are still run at the local level. The actual legal checklist is administered by the town clerk and the Board of Civil Authority, but the statute calls for the towns to use the statewide checklist infrastructure provided by Secretary of State. This is important from the side of when we think about making sure elections have integrity, that they're fair, that they're secure, and the attention to voters, one person, one vote. The kind of the irony we've heard from a lot of the Secretary of States across the country who have gone to the state election directors meetings is that the elections have never been fairer than they've been in the last decade across the country, never been more secure. And a big part of that is because of the Secretary of State's office here and in every other state providing these infrastructures. Decades ago, if somebody was registered in Burlington and then went to register in Moortown, that wouldn't be instantaneously found out. Now in the system, that's flagged for the clerks and follow up, make sure that person's transferred from one to the other. So all of that administration that goes into supporting clerks and maintaining their town checklists comes from this system. In addition, the automatic voter registration process, which is the collaboration and interface with the Department of Motor Vehicles, and they have a new system being developed this year, aiming to launch this fall as well. So making sure that interface will work better and more smoothly than the old systems did is a key part of this work. Absentee ballot voter tracking and voters that want to vote early and get the ballot there, being able to track that in the system, both for the clerk to be able to use as well as for the voter to be able to go on to My Voter page, which is the interface we have, and any voter can go on, update their information, and can request an early ballot, can follow to see if it was mailed to them, to track where that ballot was, if they send it back to see that it was received. That's all part of this election management system procurement. The election results reporting, the most popular website in the state in early November.
At least for a day or two.
Depends who you ask. Some people who aren't here who probably weren't too happy.
Right, maybe not much love, but at least most popular in terms of,
But they were checking
right?
it off.
They weren't there. That's right. The candidate registration election management feature to make sure that the consent of candidate forms that go in when we produce the ballots with our other vendors, to make sure that aligns with the way candidates have entered their information, the consent of candidate. The online voter registration module that can be used for people to register to vote online. These are all parts of the same system. Was true.
No, yeah, so the online registration in election management, how does it presently interface with motor voter registration? Is that all geeked out or worked out, or is there still glitches?
Well, there are two pieces. So there's the online voter registration portal. That's if you come in, if you move, you're right here in the state, you want to register. That comes in. That doesn't deal with the Department of Motor Vehicles interface. That goes directly into the system and to the clerk. The clerk's notified and enters you into the checklist that way. The Department of Motor Vehicles registration, when people get a driver's license, whether they do it in person, whether they do it online, or whether by mail, I think would be the way. there's the different, mail has the paper format, online has the little tablet at the desk, the in-person, and then the online mode. Those all go through the Department of Motor Vehicles. If the person testifies the test that they're a citizen and they want to register to vote, that goes into the system. That information comes into our system. The clerks get that information, and in the old system there certainly have been, and you probably heard about that too, certainly some bugs, either information that's pulled from the Department of Motor Vehicles from a prior address, or if somebody enters information on that way. So that's one piece that is being ironed out. We're having monthly sessions with the Department of Motor Vehicles, looking to be in the loop as their system is developed, what that interface will be, and we've kept them in the loop and connected vendors on our side as well. So again, there's several months out until they launch, but that's a piece we know will have that continued attention. And then the other interface as well is when a person does, actually I might have spoken too soon, you said if they do go through the online voter registration, or if they just enroll directly with their clerk, it does ping, if they enter their Vermont driver's license number, would ping the Department of Motor Vehicles to verify that was the number on record, so that they can be verified either with their driver's license, or if they give their social security number, ping the Social Security Administration to verify that information.
Same day voter registration may have, I'm not the town clerk, so I don't know what type of problem, but the joke used to be, if you had a problem, just say voter registration, and you were permitted to be entered onto the checklist. I don't know how long same day registration has been around.
The same day registration has been around a while, and it doesn't, and because when you register in person, when you're there, you don't need to provide the driver's license piece. You fill it in, right? So from that side, you're making that attestation, and under the penalty of perjury, there is the risk of really what much of what election law operates around in the current state is really holding people to that, knowing that the fraud, the penalty of potentially having a felony there, keeps people from breaking that. And we do, there aren't always a number, small number, usually you can count on one hand the number of cases of potential fraud that are identified. Clerks are very vigilant for that. Anything they see, they identify, turn to the Attorney General's office. But really what we found, and what we hear across the country too, is that the levels of that are very low compared. And when you,
Sorry, I didn't mean, I thought you were finished, but.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, compared to the people who used, we had, I think it was over 7,000 people used the same day registration on election day. So when you look at that turnout that Vermont was able to have, that over 70% turnout, I think is part of what's looked at and seen as the upside of same day registration.
So I'm just going to ask quickly, are those same day registrations provisional in any way? Is there some, are they held aside and then somehow checked, or is there any way of doing that? Or is that not so?
No, I mean, ultimately the clerk and the Board of Civil Authority administer the elections locally. So they have the guidelines. If they challenge a voter or a voter's challenge, there would be cases where they would be.
That would happen. That should have to happen at that moment, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's not, they would convene. That's why the Board of Civil Authority is encouraged to have as many members working together as poll workers there, so they can convene if there is an instance like that. And again, those are very few and far between.
Sorry to interrupt. We should let you go because we're running out of time.
Yep. Yeah. No problem at all. I will just say to the last, my last slide, and then the secretary has the slide for the recap, the important slide there. We'll turn it back. But just to say that on the election management side, we're targeting the May 2025 launch. We spent much of February, the beginning of February, doing end user testing. Our vendor was up, and we had about 10 town and city clerks who spent a lot of time that that week going through the system, helping identify bugs, helping identify what could be improved from the user interface side. And then we had a smaller group at the end of the month after making a bunch of changes. Obviously, it was harder to tap clerks at the end of February, right before town meeting day. So we're at a point now, though, we're doing continued testing and walkthroughs of various interfaces at the same time, working with the vendor on planning and scheduling the robust set of trainings for April to get the clerks involved. It's good timing too, I should have said before as well, when you have a turnover of a lot of clerks only start right after town meeting day. This way we're having a lot of new clerks coming in. We'll be able to get them right started on the training on the new system. That's where we are. And anything else, happy to see the last slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll speak really fast because I know we're out of time. But this last slide is probably the one that is most important for me to leave you with. And as I talked about in my opening remarks, this was a tremendous investment, not only because it came all at the same time over the first 2 years being in office, and for these very small teams to be doing their work at the same time as they're building their new system. Was a tremendous undertaking. We have staggered the expiration dates of these new systems that we've built so that they won't automatically all come at the same time. And some of the contracts have options for extensions as well, which should give us a little bit of flexibility in being able to plan better for the next iteration of these systems. However, on the right side of the slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about how we budget for this. The only reason we were able to do all of these IT systems at the same time is because we had federal funding to help us with the elections system, and because we had a little bit of excess receipts, that money that was brought in by the business services division, which would ordinarily be swept back into the general fund. And so we asked to retain that in order to be able to pay for these IT system builds. But it's really important to recognize that we don't know what the budgetary and fiscal outlook is going to be in 5, 6, 8 years, right? We don't know whether we'll be able to continue to depend on federal funding even to support elections infrastructure going forward. We don't know what the business climate will be and whether we will continue to have as many businesses registering in the state as we currently do. It is important to me to begin the conversation about the creation of an IT capital fund. I am a separately elected independent statewide officer. I do not have general fund support. And all I have is any excess receipts that may come in through the business services revenue. And so my thought is that in order to be responsible to future secretaries, whoever happens to be secretary when these next projects come up, it would be wise for the Secretary of State's office to begin to accumulate a little bit of capital IT fund in the same way that we would if we knew we needed to build a new building. Which is essentially what we're doing when we build a new IT system. We are building the new interface that customers need in order to be able to come and access the services we provide.
Is this part of the bill that's now being discussed in Commerce?
It is not a part of that bill. It is a conversation that I have begun to have with your chair, and she has had some conversations with the Joint Fiscal Office because it would be a new creation to create a fund that would be a capital reserve for IT expenditures. And I would need legislative authority to do that.
Right.
That was my question.
Yeah, because I imagine it's a statute that excess revenue
Yes.
is swept into the general fund.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my question, but thank you.
Yeah.
Gotta think ahead. Yeah. Otherwise, you find yourself like the Department of Labor with a 50-year-old IT system that that you can't afford to replace because you never invested in saving up for its replacement. And the functions that we that we perform at the Secretary of State's office are too important to allow an aging IT system to either cause a breach or limit the functionality of what we can do for our runners. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Bailey had a question.
Yeah, so what was the average sweep that they would take?
Well, it varies from year to year. I think in the last couple of years, it's been $1 million or $1.5 million. And, you know, it really sort of, it's highly dependent on how many corporations are forming and renewing in any given year. David, I don't know if you have statistics on the top of your head about the variability of the income from business services division.
I haven't, but I know anecdotally that because of the pandemic funding, the businesses had to be active in good standing with the registered authority in every state. So if you want to apply for a PPP loan, your business had to be in good standing. And I know that caused a tremendous uptick in the number of businesses coming back, filing reinstatements, annual reports to get and amendments to get everything up to date. So that, you know, even if I could tell you year over year, the variability, I know it was heavily impacted by pandemic a couple of years there.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We want to take a 5-minute break.